The funeral home smelled like lilies and lies. I stood in the back corner, watching my twin sister Veronica work the room like she was born for this moment. Which, in a way, she was. She'd been preparing for Dad's death since we were teenagers, and now, at 32, she was finally cashing in. Such a tragedy. She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief that remained suspiciously dry. Daddy never recovered from losing my twin at birth. He talked about her until the very end. The mourners nodded sympathetically. Our father's business partners, distant relatives, family friends. None of them knew I was standing 10 feet away. Because according to Veronica, I'd been dead for 32 years. I wasn't supposed to be at the funeral. Hell, I wasn't supposed to exist. But when your estranged father dies and leaves behind a $47 million estate, you tend to hear about it, even when you've been erased from the family history. The text had come from an unknown number 3 days ago. Your father passed. Funeral Thursday. Your sister is telling everyone you died at birth. Thought you should know. A friend. A friend. I still didn't know who'd sent it, but they'd given me just enough time to drive 18 hours from Seattle to Boston, where I now stood watching my sister perform her one-woman show. The grieving only child. Daddy left everything to me, of course. Veronica was telling Martha Blackwood, Dad's CFO. As his only surviving child, it's my burden to bear. I almost laughed. Burden. The only thing burdening Veronica was deciding which yacht to buy first. You see, 20 years ago, when we were 12, our parents divorced. The custody battle was brutal, expensive, and scarring. Mom wanted both of us. Dad wanted both of us. The judge, in his infinite wisdom, decided to split us up. Veronica went with Dad and his money. I went with Mom and her nursing career. But that wasn't enough for Veronica. She didn't just want Dad's love, she wanted all of it. So she started small. First, I was away at camp when Dad called. Then I was going through a phase when I didn't return his letters. By the time we were 16, she'd convinced him that I'd told her I never wanted to see him again. Mom tried to intervene, but Dad's lawyers were better. Restraining orders have a way of making communication difficult. Mom died when I was 25, taking the truth with her. Or so Veronica thought. What she didn't know was that I'd become quite successful myself. My tech startup had sold for $8 million 2 years ago. I lived quietly in Seattle, had a different last name after Mom remarried briefly, and had no social media presence. To anyone looking, Sophia Miranda didn't exist. But DNA doesn't lie. Veronica? A man in an expensive suit approached my sister. I'm James Whitmore, your father's estate attorney. We need to discuss the will reading. Of course, Veronica smiled. I'm ready whenever you are. There's just one small formality, Whitmore said. Your father's will has an unusual clause. Any inheritor must provide DNA testing to confirm biological relationship. It was something he insisted on after some unfortunate situations with people claiming to be relatives. Veronica's smile flickered for just a moment. That's unusual. Your father was very specific. The testing company will be here tomorrow. Once we confirm you're his biological daughter, we can proceed with the transfer of assets. I watched Veronica's jaw tighten. She knew about the DNA clause, she had to, which meant she thought she'd found a way around it. That evening, I followed Veronica to our father's house. The sprawling mansion in Beacon Hill looked exactly as I remembered it from the few photos Mom had kept. Veronica entered using her key, and I waited an hour before approaching. The back door was open. Careless, but typical Veronica. She always assumed she was the smartest person in any room. I found her in Dad's study, frantically searching through documents. Looking for something? I asked. She spun around, and for a moment, I saw myself reflected in her face. Same sharp cheekbones, same green eyes, same auburn hair. The only difference was the expression. Hers was twisted with shock and rage. You're supposed to be in Seattle, she hissed. I'm supposed to be dead, according to you. How did you? She stopped herself. It doesn't matter. You can't prove anything. I don't have to prove anything. DNA will do that for me. Veronica laughed, a cold sound that echoed off the mahogany bookshelves. You think I didn't plan for this? I've been paying off Dad's doctor for years. Your DNA test will show you're not related. Mine will show I am. Case closed. Dr. Morrison? The one who's been treating Dad for his heart condition. Her eyes narrowed. How do you know about Morrison? Because I've been watching Veronica. For years. I know about the prescriptions you've been switching. The medications you've been withholding. The vitamins that were actually blood thinners when he needed clotting agents. The color drained from her face. You can't prove. I can actually. Every prescription, every switch, every forged signature. I have copies of everything. Morrison kept excellent records, especially after I started paying him more than you were. You're lying. I pulled out my phone and showed her a video. It was Morrison, sitting in what looked like a police interview room. Miss Carlyle paid me to falsify medical records and DNA tests. I have all the documentation here. That's impossible. Morrison would never. He would when facing 25 years for medical fraud versus 2 years with a plea deal. He was arrested this morning. Veronica sank into Dad's leather chair. You planned this. No, you planned this. For 20 years, you've been erasing me, lying about me, stealing my father from me. Did you know he hired private investigators to find me? 3 different ones over the years. You paid them all off or misdirected them. How do you know all this? The 4th investigator. The one you didn't know about. He found me 5 years ago. I pulled out a worn envelope from my pocket. Dad wrote me letters. Hundreds of them. He never sent them because you told him I was dead, but he wrote them anyway. The investigator gave them to me after Dad realized what you'd done. If he knew, why didn't he? Change his will. He did. 2 weeks before he died. The new will requires DNA testing because he knew you'd try something. He knew you'd been poisoning him slowly, making him sicker, more dependent on you. He just didn't have enough time to stop you. So what now? Veronica's voice was bitter. You take everything? Leave me with nothing. No, I'm not you. I sat down across from her. Dad's will splits everything equally between us. 50-50. 23.5 million each. More than enough for anyone. But I earned it. I stayed with him. I took care of him. You killed him, Veronica. Slowly, methodically, but you killed him. And you killed any chance of me knowing my father. 20 years stolen from both of us. The next morning, the DNA testing company arrived at the estate. Veronica and I both provided samples, watched by Whitmore and 2 other lawyers. Veronica's hands shook as she swabbed her cheek. Mine were steady. The results will be available within 24 hours, the technician announced. But I already knew what they would show. 2 identical DNA profiles. Twin daughters of David Carlyle. What Veronica didn't know yet was that the police were waiting outside. Morrison's testimony, combined with the evidence I'd gathered, was enough for a warrant. Murder charges were hard to prove, but attempted murder, fraud, and forgery? Those would stick. As the technician packed up their equipment, I handed Veronica one of Dad's letters. This one's addressed to both of us, I said quietly. She opened it with trembling fingers. My dear daughters, if you're reading this together, then Sophia found a way home. I pray that's what happened. Veronica, I loved you, but I knew what you were doing. The pills, the lies, the loneliness you wrapped around me like a shroud. You thought I was too weak to fight back, but you were wrong. I was just buying time for your sister to find the truth. Sophia, I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to find you sooner. Every day without you was a punishment I probably deserved for not fighting harder during the divorce. Your mother was right to protect you from what our family had become. I'm leaving you both equal shares because you're both my daughters. But Veronica, there's a condition to your inheritance. You must confess what you've done. All of it. If you don't, Sophia gets everything. I hope someday you can forgive each other. I hope someday you can be sisters again. All my love. Dad. Veronica looked up at me, tears finally real on her face. You knew about the condition? I knew. And you were going to let me confess? Let me have half even after everything. I was. But you won't have much time to spend it from prison. The doorbell rang. Whitmore answered it, and 2 detectives entered the study. Veronica Carlyle? You're under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and falsifying medical records. As they read her rights, Veronica stared at me. You're not going to forgive me, are you? Like Dad wanted. Maybe someday, I said. But forgiveness doesn't mean escaping consequences. You stole 20 years from Dad and me. Now the state will take some years from you. That seems fair. As they led her away, I stood in Dad's study, surrounded by his books, his papers, his presents. I picked up another letter from the stack the investigator had given me, dated just 3 months ago. Dear Sophia, today I saw a woman who looked like you might look now. She had your mother's smile and was helping an elderly man across the street. I followed her for 3 blocks before I realized it wasn't you. It's never you. But I keep looking. I'll always keep looking. Love, Dad. I pressed the letter to my chest, and let myself cry for the first time since Mom died. I cried for the father I never knew, for the sister I lost to greed, for the family we could have been. The DNA results came back the next day, confirming what everyone now knew. I was Sophia Carlyle, survivor, daughter, heir. But more importantly, I was the daughter who didn't let greed destroy her soul. Veronica was right about one thing. I did earn my inheritance. Not by staying, but by surviving her erasure. By living despite being declared dead. By choosing truth over comfortable lies. The estate would take months to settle. Veronica's criminal trial would take longer. But I had something I'd never had before: time. Time to read all of Dad's letters. Time to learn who he really was. Time to mourn the relationship we never had. And time to decide what to do with $23.5 million and the truth that money can't buy back the years that were stolen. But at least, finally, I existed again. The dead girl at birth was alive, and she had quite a story to tell.